I appreciate everyone for attending today. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A box at the bottom, not the chat box. It just makes it a little bit easier for us to get through it. A few other housekeeping items: that this is being streamed live and being recorded. It will be available on our YouTube channel afterwards. But before we get started here, I don't think we need to introduce Cam. Everyone knows who he is. It needs no introduction. But John and Zach, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourselves.
John, you're first.
Thank you, Zach. That's so kind of you to allow me the pleasure of going first. I'm John Nowakowski. I'm Chief Visionary Officer with Vector Tech Group. We're a technology integrator, soup to nuts, from design to implementation to ongoing services.
Awesome. And I'm Zach Hubeck. I'm with Wave LLC. I'm the VP of Sales and Marketing. 21 years in the seat here. John is one of our great partners and customers. And by trade, we're a distributor, a value-added distributor, an overused term in the industry. But we distribute technologies like for networking and Wi-Fi, as well as wireless broadband and LTE. And our good buddies at CommScope, we're here to talk about our million-foot pledge today. And I want to thank Real Access for helping us coordinate this. And I'm looking forward to this session. So thank you, guys.
Now, a lot of people might not actually know that recently Wave has got into the children's bike market. And I was just curious if you could potentially talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked, Cam. So this is a 7-year initiative. And what we do every year is Sean Lucas from CommScope, he actually started this back when it was, he started this at Ruckus, but basically it's called Bikes for Tykes. And from a macro level, we buy bikes from a manufacturer like Huffy. We get donations from manufacturers, friends, and family, and we assemble all of these bikes, and then we donate them to Toys for Tots. And so kids that are in impoverished areas of the country, or we do it locally here in Aurora, Toys for Tots will give those out to children at Christmas time, and kids that normally wouldn't have anything for Christmas will get a nice bike with a helmet and get a little taste of that freedom to ride a bike. So that's what we do.
Have you ever thought about attaching fiber to those bikes and having the kids pull the fiber down the street in those areas?
Gigabit to the home, brought to you by Bikes for Tykes.
Well, I'll tell you, as a guy who runs quite a few power sports websites, I certainly appreciate you inspiring the next generation of riders. Thank you. Get them on bikes.
Right on.
But you know what? We're not here to talk bikes, although that is an interesting business segment for you. We are here to talk about something else, right? So obviously you alluded a few moments ago about the Million Foot Challenge that you in partnership with CommScope are running. Before we get to all that, though, I thought what we could do is just have some ground floor conversation and chat about the role that structured cabling, and it's important that we're talking structured cabling, and people are thinking that as opposed to fiber, right? What role does structured cabling play in the infrastructure mix?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Zach, if that's okay. I think the easiest way to think of it is to think of it like a human body, and we have all these network components out there. But the veins of the network is really the cable. Without those veins being able to provide power and data to these end pieces, they don't function, they don't work, and just kind of a nice decoration hanging on a wall. So the structured cabling, the non-fiber side of it, the copper side of it, is imperative to make anything in a network work.
So in John's analysis there, I've got my IoT devices here, 5 IoT devices, and the veins are helping me, connect. And without that, without those wires, the wireless means nothing.
But can we rudimentarify this for a second? That is a real word. And just make sure there's a clear understanding. Like we're talking the veins, we're talking wires. Where are they?
John, you want to take it?
Yeah, they're everywhere. I have seen them done correctly and Bixby certifications and J hooks and up in the ceilings and the rafters. I've seen them gone down conduit and the walls. I've seen them in tunnels underneath the floor. These cables, though, are not just inside the building; they're outside of the building. I mean, we have, cat cables, category 5, 6, 6A, coax cables that run aerial and burial. So in the ground and in the air. I kind of feel like it's almost a military thing that we got all of our branches covered with that. So the coolest thing I've ever seen was Consumers Energy sewer runs. So if you've ever heard of a crappy cable, this is a literal crappy cable where they're actually using the sewer pipes, and they have actually little robotic guys that go into these giant sewers and pull cable along with them, so they're not having to retrench and reconduit.
Wow.
Terrible pun, but great story. Thank you.
Very, very cool. So Zach, you mentioned wireless needs wires, right? And so I was doing a little research before this event, and this Pew research, it says roughly 73% of Americans have high-speed access, a rate that is effectively unchanged since 2012, which kind of blew my mind. So what is preventing the rest of America from gaining access to good broadband?
Sure. So, we're blurring the lines a little bit of rural connectivity versus urban and suburban areas. So getting back to fiber just very momentarily, I live in Geneva, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago. And in that area, it's I have gig to the home. It is fiber. But when you talk about certain areas in America that are very rural, you've got tier 1, tier 2 carriers, fiber providers that look at a very rural area. And this is not only impacting homeowners, but schools and businesses. They'll look at that very rural area and they'll say, you know what, our cost per subscriber is going to be X, and our threshold or our pain threshold to be able to deploy our infrastructure there is about here. So we're just going to totally not deploy fiber to this area. We're not going to deploy to that school district, or those homes. And the bottom line is, everybody needs connectivity today. And the fact that that hasn't changed since 2012 as Americans, that's pretty insulting there. But at the core of it, just like John was talking about, you need this structured cable investment at your NOC, your Cat 5, your Cat 6 cable to allow that connectivity. And again, when you're looking at the impact from an economic standpoint, a lot of these carriers will not extend and reach these areas where people truly do need connectivity.
So let's take a step back here, and I want to hone in on a few articles that I saw, on one on TechCrunch and one on The Verge. And the one on The Verge was talking about how schools are not pandemic ready for distance learning. So what does that mean? I mean, for me, it's a little bit different, right? I got 5 people on Zoom all day here, but I could see that be challenging when you start getting out into the urban, rural areas.
Yeah, so with when the pandemic hit, a lot of these IT administrators for these school districts or even these schools had the unenviable position of, not only do I, during, pre-pandemic, did I have to worry about students bringing in devices that now have to connect to my network, but now every single student, so not only do I have in my district 5 schools, but I now have 2,500 students who are their own independent connected devices or devices at the home. And to try and solve that from a security standpoint, from a, do I have the proper infrastructure to support this? Do those children even have internet connectivity at home to complete their electronic learning? Those are just all of the challenges that these IT administrators are facing today. So it's just been absolutely brutal as far as being able to be pandemic ready, if you will.
Well, so like there was that Taco Bell story, right? And like that's this conversation surrounding school and connectivity kind of brings that to mind. We all remember that went viral a couple months ago.
Yep.
Right, those two kids that were doing. Hey, but by the way, did you guys do the follow up? Did you ever look into what happened after that?
I think wasn't there a GoFundMe that occurred?
They got funded, bud. So like people started donating tons of money, not only to them personally, but to the school district as well. And so they're actually able to deploy, I believe, outdoor Wi-Fi in places, which was kind of a cool outcome.
Cool.
But I kind of feel like, is that an isolated experience? That situation, people having to take those kind of steps to get connectivity?
No, absolutely not. So schools have a lot of good programs and technology programs. There's E-rate initiatives, which are very much focused on getting a school's network up and running and able to support all of those students and the faculty and the teachers. But when those children go home, and they may even have a one-to-one device, they may have an iPad or a Chromebook or what have you, but when they go home and mom and dad can't afford internet, that device now becomes a brick. So you do see stories like two children going to the Taco Bell parking lot to connect to the open Wi-Fi in that parking lot, or a kid walking 2 miles to go get to the school and sit outside of the building so they can just simply do their homework. And that is a problem. That is a major problem.
Yeah, I'd say so.
John,
was there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, a bunch. I think education was hit the hardest in the pandemic. I mean, it was chaos on a lot of different fronts, which we all know, right? We're all living in it. Chris has got 5 people home doing Zoom calls, and the rest of that, our space got a little bit smaller and our internet a lot smaller. But you talk about the number of devices that came on into these schools immediately. Everybody went to a one-to-one initiative, which was kind of, we were heading there. We were probably 3 or 4 years out before the pandemic of doing a one-to-one initiative, and now, every single school and their brother has had to move into a one-to-one environment. And what does that look like from a management point, and like you said, Zach, a security point. Break fix, being able to handle the workloads, right? Because a lot of schools started back this year and brought all those devices that they went one-to-one with last year. So we had all kinds of crazy last-minute technology upgrades, speeds, more Wi-Fi, better density, running like crazy in the educational environment. I do want to compliment and commend the educational sector for being constantly out of the box thinking on how to solve this. There was no direction. There was no, this is how we can make it work 100%, and everybody was different. But I saw some of the most amazing ideas come out of how to handle and how to set up. Some of the things just from Vector's side that we've done in-bus Wi-Fi. So, we use a Ruckus M510. We actually backhaul it to the school. So Ruckus M510 is an LTE-based internet access point. And we ended up using the school buses with their DC-powered batteries and putting these out into rural areas and providing hotspot coverage for them. So they didn't have to walk 2 miles to the school. Maybe they were right outside, or maybe some of them were able to get it from in their house. But again, it was out of the box thinking. We built yard carts. I know this sounds crazy, but we actually built yard carts that had UPSs on them and access points in a NEMA enclosure. And we would actually, because one of the big initiatives in Michigan was to utilize our warm weather while we had it during our school year and do outside classrooms instead of being inside. Well, obviously getting Wi-Fi outside sometimes is not the easiest thing to do and can get expensive. So we built these yard carts where the teachers could actually just unplug them from the wall, walk their entire class out, pulling this little yard cart on 4 big rubber wheels, and it would auto mesh to the APs inside and provide another 200 feet of coverage outdoors for their classroom to be outside. Yeah, there's a lot. The sad part though, and I think the part that we always have to remember is the rural areas and the impoverished areas, and how do we make something there better than what these temporary solutions that we've come up with, right? Which were band-aids that are going to get us through to it, but we really need to put our brains together, our heads together, initiatives together. That's what I loved about this Million Mile program from CommScope is that's what we need to be doing. We need to be figuring out how to solve this problem and get internet to these places that don't have it.
So I'm
Now,
laughing because I'm like, wow, it's amazing how one typo totally changes everything, right?
we're gonna make it to 1,000,000 miles, John. We're starting with 1,000,000 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought 1,000,000 feet was too little. We got to do 100 million miles, man.
No, we actually decided that 189 miles was exactly enough.
Okay.
But actually, I think it comes down to the fact that the million feet is the first million feet, right?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I don't know if you've been working with Zach for a while. He's a long-term kind of guy. I get the impression that this could be a recurring initiative if we see those feet really get deployed, right? But I don't want to speak on his behalf. I do want to interject though. So first off, John, you make excellent points. John and Zach both, you make excellent points regarding education. I feel like the infrastructure gaps in education though are very widely discussed because of the nature of just the industry and the segment, right? It's discussed in mainstream news and all that kind of stuff quite a lot. But what about areas where maybe the same type of connectivity gap introduces significant challenges that aren't quite as public facing? And I'm thinking like, I don't know, manufacturing. Case in point, I still can't get a 3080.
So I think, we have recognized that there is this digital divide, there is this gap, and that accelerates adoption of technology, which is good. So there's a lot of federal funding programs that are going on. In addition to E-rate, there's CARES Act, there's RDOF, and there's CAF. So we can connect these communities. But when you start accelerating on that, the demand on manufacturing becomes exponentially higher. And so manufacturers in the technology space, they're having to keep up with demand. They're having to build more technology so people can deploy more technology and connect more people. And God forbid, someone within that manufacturing plant is diagnosed with COVID and there are shutdowns. And so when we talk about the pandemic and connecting America and how things are impacted from a manufacturing standpoint, that adoption of technology is one area, but also those same IT director challenges that happened at that school district or those schools that we are talking about, same thing is happening in the manufacturing segment, because now you have all these remote workers that you need to support that are trying to do the same thing. And if you don't have that critical infrastructure, or if you're behind the 8 ball a little bit, as that manufacturer and your technology is not up to speed, you're going to have the same problems that that IT director had at that school.
Yeah, and just to add on, some of the things, again, at Vector, I can only speak for what I know, but I know the amount of automation and smart hands, smart intelligence that we've been deploying at manufacturing has gone tenfold. I mean, there's a need and a requirement for people to be able to work remotely and be able to configure and check and work through what their jobs if they were on site were. I mean, it's really put an emphasis on automation of those and using more smarts than brawn. And I look at another area, and Chris, forgive me if I go off topic or change on you, but another vertical I think that's been hugely impacted has been healthcare, right? Like it's, all the craziness, everybody's going in, hospitals flooding and all that good stuff. The one of the coolest things that I think I've experienced this year out of healthcare's transformation is virtual doctor appointments. And I can't tell you how cool that is to me that, when I say that I'm going to be there at an 11 o'clock appointment, that the Zoom comes on and I go right into my 11 o'clock appointment. It's a whole new concept versus spending, 2.5 hours waiting to go see the doctor type thing. So I love the timeliness and the planning, the convenience of it. You know, I don't have to budget 45 minutes for each way of a drive to get there, and you know, makes me a lot more efficient in my work life. But I think you're seeing a lot of, you know, this pandemic force those kinds of things, those kinds of changes that I think are intelligent changes.
Can you give me some examples? Maybe can we talk about some examples of like organizations that are implementing these changes, becoming pandemic ready?
Yeah, I mean, can I go to a different vertical, or do you want me to talk about the two we just went to?
I mean, you can talk about whatever you. I'm learning from you, my man. So
All right. I think one of the coolest, well, not coolest, one of the biggest changes that I'm seeing is pandemic ready. It's kind of crazy because they're not even open yet, right? They're still in lockdown and furlough. And I would say that would be the public spaces, right? Arenas, convention centers, you know, and what I'm seeing them doing right now, and we've been working on quite a few projects is, you know, essentially it looks like a metal detector that you walk through, does temperature scans, it pulls air samples out, you know, it can tell your heartbeat, and all of this information gets relayed back in, and you know, so you start thinking, yeah, okay, that makes sense, right? Like if I can prevent, you know, somebody with COVID-20 or COVID-21 or whatever the next revision of it is, or I can be a little bit smarter, I can be a little bit more intelligent to make sure that the people that are coming to my establishment or the people that work for me are, you know, protected and safe, and are put in the best possible scenario they can be.
So
think-
it sounds as a technology community that we have to support our local communities, right? And you're bringing up some examples of kind of these solutions that you've put together, and it sounds like that's a conglomerate of different technologies coming together to solve a problem. But how do you see our industry providing this type of support? What are some other examples out there?
I think one thing I can take that, in what John is doing with his team. One of the things that I observed right out of the gate and back in the March, April, May timeframe was, okay, the hospitality industry certainly took a hit because there's no more business travel and there's certainly no tourist travel happening. And so those hotels, while they furloughed a lot of employees, they also became temporary healthcare facilities for testing for COVID patients or even treating COVID patients. So when you start talking about arenas and parking lots and areas that are public spaces like John has been talking about, the Army Corps of Engineers came out right out of the gate with RFPs for partners that were deploying Wi-Fi and networking gear and the structured cabling that we're talking about today in that hotel. They now are repurposing that infrastructure or even adding on to that infrastructure to be able to connect within that parking lot of that hotel where a temporary tent and doctors and nurses can come and treat patients. And so just seeing that's the spirit of America. Get it done, support each other, support the local community. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. So it was pretty cool to see things like that happen.
that's actually a pretty topical example. Certainly where I am, there's a lot of messaging happening right now. ICUs are full. Situation is not great, folks. We need to keep this under control, right? So hearing about novel solutions like that is important. It adds capacity, right? But in both of those examples, John's example earlier about the stadiums with the all-in-one magic detector thing, and then which is the official name, I understand. And then of course, what we're doing in temporary facilities, that all requires a lot of bandwidth, right?
Yeah,
You're adding a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, what else is there? I mean, John, I think we were chatting earlier and just offhand, you mentioned a kind of an interesting solution that I think is kind of cool. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do. So I've been involved in a couple projects now. Just to give you the whole backstory of it. One of the projects that I was involved with was a school. It was a K-8 school. And the campus of the school was very interesting. It was a new kind of idea of a school. So the school is broken up into multiple buildings, and they're government buildings. So you have a city museum, you have an arts institute, you have all of these arts and science, and so, but you have to go from building to building to building to building. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that it was a K-8 school. So imagine one teacher having 30 kindergartners trying to wrangle them from building to building. We did see some potential problems with that. You're crossing streets, and two eyes and 30 kids is not an easy thing.
Right.
So we got heavy into Bluetooth and Zigbee and doing tracing of these students. So we could immediately set up geo fences of if a student was to step off the crosswalk, we would have a notification sent out where we could go and talk to Joey or Tommy or Susie. Or if they breached that field and we knew that they breached the secondary field, so the kid was on the run or got taken, who knows? But we wanted to know where those for lack of a better term, assets were, right? We needed to know where all of those students and people and be able to track and know exactly where in the campus they were. Billy's mom calls and she needs to come get him immediately. We know exactly where Billy's at. So I kind of took that knowledge and we've put together a kind of a pilot in the construction industry of doing contact tracing with the same thing. So essentially what we do is we set up a wireless mesh network, right? With 5 gigahertz, 2.4 and the rest of it. All of the access points are Zigbee and BLE enabled. And that's actually the information that we're going after. All the access points are battery powered and recharged on solar. So we don't have to worry about getting power to these locations to make this all form and function. And so with the construction site, one of the worries and woes that we have in construction site is who's coming into the site, where are they on the site, and who do they get near or anything else. And so what we're doing is we're issuing badges, RFID badges, a little bit bigger than a credit card to the construction worker. And from there, we model and map exactly where that construction worker has been in the building. And so now we can take all of that information and we know if somebody came down with COVID, we can kind of pinpoint the time framing and we can come back in and we can say to said construction worker, hey, you need to quarantine for 14 days. We've had, a confirmed case of COVID. It was somebody that came in within 3 feet of you and worked in the same room for 32 minutes. I mean, we can pinpoint all of this analytical data and get ahead of it. We're using technology to try to not be big brother contact tracing. I don't want an app on my cell phone, right? Type thing. I'm kind of one of those conspiracy theorists myself. But I'll take a card and an RFID card. We use them swipe badges to get indoors all the time. And I'm happy to have them trace me around, and I would feel protected as a construction worker if I had faster, more intelligent information than I think I was in this area.
I feel like that's an example though. Like, so first off, that's really cool. Like just to geek out for a sec, that's pretty cool. But like, think of the applications for a similar type of deployment across multiple industries, right? Like the benefits in construction are huge. Imagine what that would be in hospitality, right?
Absolutely.
Well, imagine what that would be if you installed it at my house and I could track where my kids are. I wouldn't have to watch them anymore.
I don't make
that already, Chris.
I don't really make or understand kids' jokes because I'm a dink. So,
so let's talk about this 1,000,000-foot pledge, or as John would like to say, he's taking it to 1,000,000 miles. What does this pledge signify? Oh my God.
Signify.
Easy for you to say. I think you put the emphasis on the wrong syllable there, Chris.
Yeah.
All right. So Here's the Million Foot Pledge. So it's millionfootpledge.com. Okay. And so when people sign up for that, we had about 204 people already sign up. It's a fairly new program for us, a couple of months in, and we've had about 204 people take the pledge. And essentially, you get a demo kit. So our good buddies at CommScope have donated some equipment to us, Wave. And so when people take the pledge, they have the ability to get a demo kit. And what we send them is some Cat 6 riser cable. We send them some wall jacks, some keystone jacks, wall plates. There's a cool puck that CommScope has created to allow ease of installability for throwing around syllables today. So, you know, CommScope has provided us a lot of good demo equipment, and taking that pledge, yes, you get a demo kit, but you're also taking that pledge to do exactly what we're talking about here today. Take care of your community. As technologists, commit to connecting the unconnected. And I've even heard examples of some people that have taken the time to teach that physical education 75-year-old man who's teaching PE, who now has to do a Teams workout with 30 children, who hasn't touched a computer in 15 years. And so it's much more than just signing up online, getting a demo kit of cables. It's more of a, I am committed to connecting people, helping them stay current, and helping them through technology enhance their lives. And that's really what the Million Foot Pledge means to me, above and beyond cables.
Very cool. So it's mid-November now. It's got some legs under it. Obviously, a lot of people committing. How's the progress going?
Yeah, so as far as commitments, purchasing the cables as well, as far as deploying for projects and things like that, we've got quite a ways to go. We've got a lot of excitement. Demo kits are flying off the shelves here, and my marketing team is just very, very busy with a lot of those inquiries. And you know, as people receive these demo kits, I'm hearing good feedback. But we've got quite a ways to go to get to 1 million feet. And man, oh man, to get to 1 million miles, we've got a ways to go here. So we need help and support from the community here.
So how many feet of cable comes with this kit?
Yeah, so essentially what I do, I'll do 3 patch cords. Essentially, I'll do about 80 feet each, and people can splice those up and do some patch cables. You'll get 100 feet as well if you wanted to do one run. That's all included in the package as well. So if people want to take that pledge and respond, that's how much cable they're receiving.
So before we wrap up, Zach, I know like earlier in this conversation, we had a section where it was how have companies stepped up to support the community. And I kind of feel like maybe there's a little bit of humility here from you. Certain situation involving a partner of yours, perhaps deploying some things in a place maybe that maybe we could touch on.
I'm not catching what you're throwing at me.
Really? Because CommScope tosses 44 outdoor access points and connects all these people.
Okay.
We don't want to talk, really?
It was kind of softball at both of us, Zach.
I love it. So John, why don't you go ahead and take that? But our buddies at CommScope, there's a lot of philanthropy we've talked about in this call. We've talked about bikes for kids who are going to run fiber to everybody's home, even in a sewer. We'll throw those kids in there to bike, get that fiber. No, I'm just joking. We're not going to do that. But yeah, our good buddies at CommScope provided 44 access points to deploy into communities here. And John, I think you knew more. We're involved with this project here. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I spearheaded that project. So yeah, I was definitely involved in that one. But so when schools opened back up, there became as I talked about before, the need for outdoor, right? That was Michigan's, and I'm from Michigan. That was Michigan's first line of defense was get the kids outdoors, keep them outdoors. Obviously first line of defense, mask up, right? We're Mass, Michigan. And so the second line of defense then would have outdoors, right? Let's fresh air in Michigan. Our air is the cleanest and purest in the world. And so if we can be breathing it, it's an amazing thing. So, but one of the biggest problems that we ran into when we started, getting these requests for how are we going to move outdoors? How are we going to move outdoors? And we started noticing that the non-affluent schools really didn't have the money to make an outdoor environment for their kids and still use the devices that they needed to. And so I had a conversation with Pramod, and he said, "John, what do you need?" Obviously high up ruckus guy, and I said, I went around and I talked to different districts on what their plans were. I feel these districts really can make an impactful difference with outdoor access points. And so he said, well, let's do it. And I said, well, I just want you to understand that I need 44 access points. 1,600 bucks a pop, 44 of them, no problem, John. I'll swipe a check is actually what he said. His commitment and level to making sure that we can continue on, damn the cost or anything else, but we need to stand up and rally together to make the environments for our kids. I mean, that's who really got punched in the face with this whole thing. I know my kids, for sure were going nuts during the full on lockdown and not being able to see their friends and having to Zoom and changing and the rest of that. So like these kinds of things that we can do to make a difference, to make a kid's environment better for their learning and for their mental health, I think is something that we got to honestly push into.
Thanks for sharing.
That's Cam. That is the essence of the Million Foot Pledge right there.
I know. That's why I was like, wait, why are we not telling this story? I think that's like, you talk about, the spirit of America. I think there it is. 44 examples of that all over somewhere in Michigan.
Thank you, CommScope. Thank you, Vector Tech Group.
All right. So just to close this out, first off, thank you both, John and Zach, for attending. Don't forget, millionfootpledge.com. Take the pledge, get your demo kit, your cable kit, and then let's get some cable deployed. Right at the end is when all the enunciation mistakes start happening, right? Everything we talked about, there's a lot of novel solutions we talked about today. All of that requires connectivity, high bandwidth access to the networks that matter. And that's what the pledge does. So millionfootpledge.com.